This is Heart to Hearties, the official after show and podcast of the fandom, where we bring your questions directly to the cast and crew. I'm Marg from San Diego.
And I'm Annette from South Carolina.
I'm Lori from Mobile, Alabama.
And we're joined today by a writer that I think will be very familiar to the Hearties, Alfonso Moreno. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate this.
Where do you live, Alfonso?
I live in Los Angeles.
Oh, you do? Okay. All right. So did you travel to Canada for these, or was it a virtual writer's room for your?
No, I traveled to Canada. So
Okay.
I've gotten to know it well, and I actually I love Vancouver. I'm planning to move out there too because I've gotten to know it so well. I probably, and I love that it's a walking city, and that's something I've never grew up. When I grew up, it was always like Los Angeles is so sort of like vast, and
Yes.
you can't get anywhere without you can't go anywhere without getting in your car. And I love the fact that you can just walk around there. So
Right. Amazing. I love it. Okay. Well, Alfonso was the showrunner for When Calls the Heart seasons 5 through 7. So 3 seasons. And now is the showrunner of When Hope Calls. So that season 2 will start this week on PureFlix, the streamer, and then on Great American Family on Sunday. Is that correct, everybody?
that's correct.
Keep me
That's
on.
correct.
Okay. So we're going to touch on both of these things because Hearties are wildly curious. But let's catch Hearties up. You left the show in season 8. Was that to focus on When Hope Calls? Was that the idea? Because I remember you had been doing both of them.
Yeah, it was to focus on When Hope Calls, and yes, the season 7 and season 1 sort of overlapped a lot, and it took a lot to. And I don't know if you remember this. We actually had to, at the same time while I was doing season 7, season 6 had started already airing, and then I had to go out and reshoot that whole thing. So not reshoot the whole thing, but we had to re-edit it and reshoot
Oh,
scenes.
yes, of course.
So I was doing the 3 things actually. So
Wow.
it was quite the
Wow,
year.
that had not occurred to me. That's
Juggle.
incredible.
That's right.
Incredible. Okay. And other projects that you've been doing as well?
I've written some, Christmas movies. One that was on recently on Great American Family, which was called Blessings of Christmas with Lori Loughlin, and it did well.
Yes,
Lori actually won an award for that.
We love that movie. Yes, absolutely. Oh, wonderful. I'm so glad you reminded us of that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I wrote another one for Hallmark. So it's been busy.
Okay, very good. All right. Well, we're delighted to get to talk to you again.
It's exciting to have you here.
Thank you.
Hearties still quote your legendary H.E.R. acronym that stands for humor, emotion, and romance, the 3 ingredients that make our show great. We loved hearing you say on Edify that it was something you came up with when you interviewed for When Calls the Heart. Now, Heartie Margaret Ferreira Genzali of Braintree, Massachusetts would love to know if you remember your first impressions of Brian Bird and Michael Landon Jr. and how you reacted to being hired to head up When Calls the Heart.
Well, I was thrilled to be hired to run that show. It came late in the process where they brought me in to rewrite. I'd interviewed for the showrunner job, I think in April, and I didn't get it. And what happened is that then they called me back when the Christmas movie, they had started the Christmas movie first that season. So they called me in to rewrite it. And then as I was rewriting it, they were already shooting it. And as I was rewriting it, they said, you know what, we do want to bring you on as a showrunner. So from that moment on, I was a showrunner from the very first episode, but they were already shooting it. And which made the season a challenge because normally you have all those months to gear up on stories, and I was starting from scratch.
Oh no!
And what I ended up doing is I spent the whole season basically holed up in a hotel room in Vancouver, writing it and rewriting it. And I was working with the writers, and I met the writers one time in person, when I was in Los Angeles, I went over, brought some pizza, said hello to everybody, and then I went off to Vancouver. And then from then on, it was phone conversations where I would, talk to the team, and then we'd come up with storylines, and I'd sign each one an act, and they'd turn it in, and I would rewrite it. But because of that process, normally the way productions work is you're shooting for 13 days, what they call block shooting, where we shoot 2 episodes. And we have from the first day of shooting, the second block, you have like 13 days of prep to get the show going, and to get ready for the next. So it's always 13 days of prep. But because of how this happened, I only had like 5 days of prep, because I would start writing the show while we were shooting the other episode. So it was a constant. And I told production, I said, I will give you at least 5 days of prep, right? So I'll turn in the script, and yet you'll have 5 instead of 13 because of the circumstances. And we made it work, but it was always like, the train was right behind me. I had to like move fast. But it was
when I think about, we just talked to the writers last Friday, and they told us that they've been working secretly for 6 weeks. So, wow. I mean, so when did you start? If you started the Christmas movie, and then what time frame was this?
No, we
How
went
behind were you?
Well, we were we were starting the Christmas movie, and we were already shooting the Christmas movie as I was rewriting it. So we had not even the next 2 episodes to do. So I was then redoing. So that's why I would get it to the network, and normally, in my experience before this, you would turn in a story is about 8 to 10, 12 pages of like, this is what's going to happen. But I didn't have time to give them that much detail. So I would give them a page and a half. It's like, this is what the story is going to be. This is what the A, B, and C story are going to be. And then they would approve it based on a paragraph rather than like detailed storyline. And then I would write it. So and what happened since then, I found out, is that Hallmark ended up liking that process, because it encapsulated the story more.
It crystallized it. Wow.
So and then after that, when John came on, and they kept doing that. So I think that's sort of been sort of
necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah, that was born out of necessity, that trying to get the stories out quickly.
Right, the showrunner forerunner. So
hold on, Annette. Amid that stress, do you recall even meeting Brian? I mean, what your impressions were of Brian and Landon Jr.?
The first time I spoke to them was like a phone call after I'd been hired. So it was like a hello. They called me, and it was a joint phone call. So I met them, and they're very gracious and very kind, and obviously loved the series. I had, in a way, gotten to know Brian because as I was getting ready to interview for the position of showrunner, I would watch his post shows analysis, right? So he would go through it and talk about it. So, I learned about the series, and I got in some way know Brian Bird through that. And then I met them at the Hearties convention for the first time. And I can tell you that the Hearties convention, we started shooting in August, and that's when they brought me on and we finished in December. From August to December, I didn't have, the only day off I had was the Hearties convention, because I was working 7 days a week to try to keep that schedule going. But there's nothing that motivates you like a train that's right behind you, like coming up on your heels.
I'm floored. I'm completely floored. Wow.
What a process. Well, I can't imagine being a brand new showrunner and having the daunting task of writing the epic season 5. Do you recall any aha moments as you grappled with ushering the audience through Daniel Lissing leaving the show?
What I remember is this learning how passionate the fan base was, and I had a sense of that already, but it when I wrote with the season 11 episode that where again Elizabeth falls on the ground, I knew that the audience wouldn't believe it or accept it, and it was heartrending that this at one point between episode 11 and episode 12, there was a lot of fan commentary on what was going on and what might go on, and people were saying that can't be true, that won't happen, and someone posted a picture of their 6-year-old grandson in a Mountie outfit, with, saluting, saying, "Do you really want to break this little boy's heart?" And it was like, wow, it's a lot of pressure. And then when we aired it, it was there. I can tell you there was more than one person out there saying, you know what, maybe he should go. I don't know if Alfonso's really set out that they were not.
They meant you should go, is what you're saying.
Maybe Alfonso wasn't cut out for being the showrunner.
Oh my gracious. That was a lot of stress. Holy cow. Wow.
But I knew that it made for good drama, right? I felt it made.
Yes.
So ultimately, I just relied on that people, many people swore they wouldn't come back. But I felt, the fact of the matter, after that, season 6, ratings went up. So it's just, I'm a strong believer that good drama will prevail. And it was an opportunity, given that Daniel Lissing wanted to leave, to just make the best out of it, making a good storyline and a moving storyline.
It was incredible. It was very real. And Hearties responded to that eventually, if not right away.
Well, talking about good drama, what Hearties are still they still talk about those closing episodes of season 5.
Yeah.
They say they're some of the best in When Calls the Heart history. So was there ever a question whether Elizabeth would be pregnant? Because that truly has set the stage for When Calls the Heart from then to now. I mean, my goodness, little Jack just started school in season 12. So was that ever in question?
I think, all those kind of major decisions, there were some question. I mean, I think there were some network executives that were concerned that, it's always about a concern, how will the Hearty audience react to this? And I know that, that Aaron and I believe that it was the right thing to do. And what it allowed us to do was keep some of Jack alive, right? To keep the memory of Jack. We just felt it was the right thing to do. I mean, obviously I had to make the storyline work within that, where, they weren't together very long. They weren't very, very long, but, it was definitely conceivable. And it just, I felt again, I think the major thing was that it helped a little bit with this thing of Jack, right?
Yeah. Well, I can say for me personally, that whole episode, oh my gosh, just was heart-wrenching. But then in those last few minutes, there was that hook of hope that was like, oh,
that's right.
There's some hope there. I got to stick around to see what's going to happen now.
Yeah. And that's so much of the series is sort of based on that, right? It just
kind of threw us a hope life preserver is kind of what it did.
Right.
Very smart. Very, very smart. So, and then we headed off to season 6. Amy Abel of Hideaway, Texas wonders how closely you followed the casting process for season 6 when the characters of Lucas, Nathan, Allie, and Fiona were chosen. How much did they embody what you imagined for those characters?
No, I was definitely, we're in the middle of that casting process. We brought in like the finalists for those roles. It ended up being a Zoom call because so many of them were in Canada, but we had at the Hallmark Studios, we brought in Aaron to do a reading with them on basically like a Zoom call, right? But it's not as easy to do a chemistry read with that, but it still gave us some sense. But the characters do embody what I wanted from those actors, for those roles. What was key for me is that and I wanted this love triangle to be truly a difficult choice. Oftentimes in shows or series, it's like, well, of course. I mean, one guy's like this guy who's like all show, but you can tell he's kind of a jerk underneath it. And then there's this other, person who's like more earnest. And it's like, you got to go for that one. But I wanted to make it more of a difficult, honest, difficult choice, and make them very different, but both appealing in their own right. And I think I was very successful because right away there was Team Nathan and Team Lucas, and so people saw their attributes. Right, one is just a good-hearted man who wants he's successful, but he's he still has this really good heart, and he wants what's best for Elizabeth. And there's this other man who's a Mountie who's raising his niece, and how can you not root for someone who does that, right? Who's a good guy who's extending himself that way. So, that's, I felt, and both those actors brought so much to their role, right? So they both embodied it. With the character of Allie, I really wanted there to be a connection between this Allie character and Nathan, and we did what, I'm not sure it's done a lot, but we did a chemistry read between those two actors.
Oh, wow.
On the set, so that and a couple of other actresses that were up for the role, and just to see how they connected, and that's how we ended up casting that role. And then Fiona, I mean, I was blown away by her performance in the audition because I wanted someone who just brought this new spirit to One Calls the Heart, to Hope Valley, that that the 1920s are upon us, right? With this new style. And, I have in the very first episode when we introduce her, she's wearing like ankle length dress, and like people that are looking at her like,
Exactly. It was scandalous. Scandalous.
Molly and Florence were just appalled.
So I wanted that new freshness, and she definitely brought it.
Oh, they are wonderful characters that we still love 6 years later, going on 7 years later.
Yeah, and I think it was the trajectory that gave the show extended life. I don't think there's any way that that Hearties were prepared to accept either of the gentlemen right away. So, and I think having where we are now with Nathan, I think probably they wouldn't have accepted that had it not come after Lucas, maybe, or at least some of the audience. So I think it was incredibly smart. It's been hard for us because social media, that was the age when things started getting kind of divisive and weaponized and stuff. So we're still in the process of working with Hearties to say, what you can imagine in Hope Valley is what we can imagine on social media. So a real community where we could actually talk, even
That's
if
right.
we're on different teams. So
the spirit of the show is this connectedness and kindness and just coming together in times of strife. I mean, that's what makes, I believe that's why people connect to the show. It's that what we want in our lives, that community of people around you to support you when things are rough.
Yeah, and your instincts with Fiona, she just enriched the show so much. And Allie, my gosh, Jada is developing into a phenomenal. I mean, she's always been phenomenal, but they can really throw anything at her now. She's maturing into this incredible actress. So, so many gifts that have just kept giving. So
it's impossible to imagine the show without them.
Yeah.
At this point, it truly is. Those characters.
Now they've been there longer than Daniel Lissing was there.
Yeah.
So,
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, Rebecca Aaron of Ontario, Canada, loves that you named those characters after your children. We heard that in another interview. But she wonders if the characters themselves were modeled at all after people in your own life.
Not consciously. So I couldn't say that there's any one, like people who modeled. I just, there were characteristics, like I was saying, that I wanted from these people that were different from than each, that they were varied from each other, those characters, but they were both good men in their own right. And that's what sort of like, I was looking for those traits.
We've heard you talk about the fact that you were an attorney and that you worked on procedurals and legal dramas, and now have been writing these sort of heartfelt, the H.E.R. Acronym has become your motto. Donna Limerick of Shirts, Texas wonders, as it pertains to When Hope Calls, what is it about that show that's called to you? We're just so curious about what it's like to start fresh and develop a whole world and all these characters. What's that been like for you, and what's really spoken to you about it?
Starting from scratch, I knew that I wanted to still create, this show has the DNA of When Calls the Heart, right? You can't not have that, and you want that. And so, the acronyms still very much hold true. And what I wanted initially in the first season was to create a story where you look at it and say, wow, you just can see how drama can unfold and how emotion can unfold from the situation. And I did that with these with the sisters who were orphans and are young and trying to run an orphanage in a way that hadn't been run before. So I felt that was like in this world they call grist for the mill of storytelling. And in season 2, it's a little different in the sense that I have this new character come in, and there's a redemptive quality, which I also love writing about. And it's trying to, and you still have the orphans and their stories. And I love the fact that that I could tell stories of all these different children with their backstories and how to address their needs, and all that sort of can be really emotional. And then have this woman who walks in, Nora Anderson, played beautifully by Cindy Busby, who has her own sort of like backstory and why she's there, and sort of the redemptive quality of, and unlike Lillian and Grace, she doesn't have a familiarity with children and orphans, so that poses its own challenges.
And she's a lawyer.
And she's a lawyer. What do you know? I think I got a little bit of that. I do add elements like with Nurse Maggie. I love traveling. That's my passion. So I just add elements of what my experience is in traveling, and so it's fun to do those kind of things. And then I add another story of another sort of character that I bring in with the Hannah characters, played beautifully by Sarah Fisher. That it's another quality that I want to talk about, which is just trying to another fish out of water story where she has a history there a long time ago, and she lost someone that she loved dearly, and she's there and she's trying to ultimately make it work, and how this fish out of water sort of makes it in this world. And I love telling stories. Again, there's redemption, hope, emotion, romance, hope, and it's for all of these stories. In order to really sell the idea of hope and redemption, you have to, as a storyteller, challenge it. You have to challenge hope, and you have to challenge the redemption.
Right.
Because if you don't, then you don't get a sense of hope. It's only overcoming something, and at the end, reaching that goal that you say, okay, yes, hope can survive, because it survived that. It survived this circumstance. It survived that circumstance. So, these stories have to always be challenging what we want to do. And then when we reach that goal, then it sort of reinforces that idea.
Amazing. So it's filmed in Ontario, correct?
No, yeah, way north of Ontario.
Wow.
Ontario is a big province, and it's like 3.5 hour drive from Toronto.
Wow. Amazing. So our Canadian admin, Kim McDonald, has shared with us how much the province, kind of underwrote some costs to create the town of Brookfield and attract the production to the region. I just wonder when you were conceiving and creating this town, did you learn things from filming in Jamestown? Because that was
Mm.
some of it was already built up before you got there, that then informed the creation of the set in Brookfield.
Yeah, I mean, I had the advantage of having filmed in Jamestown to be able to say,
Right.
okay, now this is what we want to do differently, or this is what really works with Jamestown. So I knew that I wanted some sets I could use as swing sets. So we built that into it. I knew I needed meeting spaces. I love the fact that Jamestown had a cabin that was an all-purpose cabin that you see over and over again, and I
Yeah.
built one over there. So I mean, long term, what I hope to do in this town, I was planning to do it season 2, and I thought about it in season 1, but I've never been able to implement it yet. But what I want to do is build, like, we have full sets and then we have facades. But I want to build on the back of those, I want to build like another town so that
Oh.
when we travel, we just go around the corner. I mean, that it's there. So I just want to, like, as much as possible, get as much out of these buildings as we can.
Yeah.
Wow. Very cool. And how much is the orphanage? Is that a facade or is that a
No, that's a full big house. It's
It
all set
is.
up. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And
Amazing.
I think they've actually used that. I know they've actually used that in some of their other movies that they've
Okay.
done in there.
Oh.
Got there.
Very cool. So, various Hearties have asked about getting the show back on the air because, of course, Hallmark, it originated on Hallmark for season 1, and then Great American Family picked it up for the Christmas movie. Joy Hit Bradley of Vancouver, Washington asked, how much prayer, hope, and persistence did it take to not give up on seeing this come to reality? Because she said it's a dream come true for the
Yeah.
Hearties. And then Christina Ched of Missouri said, why did it take so long? I love the contrast in those. It's
Well,
so
it,
funny.
it did. I'll answer the second part first. I think it partly took so long for 2 reasons. One, the pandemic, and maybe the biggest reason is that it was when to go from one network to another network oftentimes
Right.
requires negotiation and some back and forth. And I think that definitely was slowed the process. And then it took a lot of prayer, hope, and persistence but I have to give credit to 2 people for this, and one is Bill Abbott. He's he was the CEO of Hallmark when it was aired on Hallmark, and then he brought it here. And I even, like, 2 years ago, he was interviewed. I think it was on Deadline, and they asked him if there was any series he ever wanted to bring back. He said, I always thought that When Hope Calls would be a series
Oh,
I'd want to bring back.
nice.
So this has been, and we had met a couple times before that, and he's always mentioned, I want to bring that show back. I want to bring that show back. So, I mean, it's him and then Brad Cravoy, an executive producer. Those 2 just were instrumental in bringing it back. I mean, my strength is as a writer, I believe, and it isn't a sort of like this person who can. I mean, I had no real sway in getting the show back, so I had to rely on the passion of those 2 individuals to make it happen.
Yeah. And that's amazing. It really is quite a success story because a lot changed. The world changed a lot, and
Yeah.
Hollywood's become a much tougher place to get things,
Yeah.
air. So it's its own little miracle. So
Yeah.
awesome.
Well, we've gotten spoiled over the years, but the truth is, it took a lot of perseverance to get When Calls the Heart on the air. We know that whole backstory. And the same is true of When Hope Calls. So, talk to us about how you approach the narrative when years have passed and with certain actors no longer available. How did you all set up the story this time around? And what really resonated with you as in this new setup?
What I've done is, we ended the story in season 1 and the Christmas movie basically like 1920, and my approach is that just instead of 5 years, only a few months have passed. That's how I would get into the story. It hasn't been a long time.
Ah, okay. All right.
There we go.
I felt that was the easiest way for me to transition, which the transition is sort of a big deal here because, I lost four of my main actors, right? So,
Yeah.
and I take pride in the fact that they've all gone on to do really well. Right?
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's important to state is it was a bit of a launching pad for them.
Yeah. So I'm really proud of that. So it's just how to tell a story. And all along, even if our Morgan Corrin's character, Lillian Walsh, even if she were coming back, I was already planning to introduce the character Nora Anderson, who played by Cindy Leslie, because I knew that the Jocelyn Houdon, Grace's character, wasn't going to be coming back. So I had an idea of what I could do with that. I ended up introducing her in a different way than I anticipated, but that character is always going to come in. And then I also knew that I wanted to expand our ranching world because I do think that's one thing that's different about like the industry when in Hope Valley is lumber. First it was coal, now it's lumber. And I wanted to make this world different and I wanted to make it a little more remote. And by being remote, they don't have all, as rustic as Hope Valley is, this place is even more rustic, right? So I wanted the ranching community, I wanted the horse. So I expand the ranching community in this season. I created a whole new set, this beautiful ranch. So we're going to be going back and forth on there too.
That's cool.
And
we know.
You
go ahead.
Recast Sam, right?
Yeah.
That's the only character we ended up recasting. Which I'm happy about because I really didn't want to do a lot of recasting. So
And how do you catch people up in terms of the narrative? What on that first episode?
We do a little like letter writing recap where we see
nice. Yeah, in the promos, it's been great seeing so many of the familiar faces, like at least 9, 10, or 11 of them I saw.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll see a few more. So that's cool. It gives that real familiarity.
Yeah, so, I think you will see that.
We know that period pieces can be expensive to produce. And Christy Stevens Holland of Oxford, Mississippi, wonders if you could speak to the challenge of having 6 episodes to work with when it comes to crafting a season-long narrative.
I mean, 6 episodes is truly like the minimum I would want to do, right? Because you have to tell a story. And honestly, when I was writing it, we weren't sure whether it was going to be 6 or 8 or 10. So I had there was a little bit of juggling there. Like as I was working, it's like, okay, if it's 6, it's going to be this, it's going to be 8, it's going to be that, it's going to be 10, it's going to be that. So until I think I'm not sure if we were shooting yet, but it was right around when we started shooting that I got the word, okay, it was 6. So then I could sort of.
Can't wait to see it.
How many challenges? My goodness, so many challenges. Well, talk to us about distinguishing the world of When Hope Calls from that of When Calls the Heart. I mean, both are inspired by the Jeanette Oaks books, by her books. It's pretty much the same time period. It feels as though having an orphanage at the center of When Hope Calls in Brookfield kind of brings a bit more intimacy to the children's stories, since they're all living in that house together in the orphanage together, that beautiful house. And you don't have the When Calls Heart black hole of where the parents are.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, I in coming up with the orphanage idea, I thought that would, was one advantage of it, right? Because, you want it to be different. And so, there's a schoolhouse, but I didn't want to be telling school stories or teacher stories so much. So how do you do that? And it seemed like orphanage would be a way to do it and a way to really get to know these children because they're there and give them personalities and give them, their own back and forth dynamics. I really felt that was a good way to tell the story of and because you always, they're always or almost always is a children's storyline that we want to tell along with the other stories. Because and I think, as a family-friendly show, you want to, it's a good opportunity to like show good values and trying to teach good values if they're all in a house together and trying to coexist. I think it's a good way to do that.
Well, and it probably creates some drama since they're not related.
Mm-hmm.
Not technically related because they're thrown in together.
Yeah.
And then presumably you'll have adoption stories too, which
That's
are
right.
always, they're among Hearties' favorite stories. So very stirring. Nice.
So I'm sure this is going to be a tough question for you, but which characters are you most enjoying writing for?
That's a little like asking which of your kids are your favorite.
I know.
We know.
They're all, honestly, and it's true that they're all fun in their own way. And I tell the actors this when I first write the characters on page. I have this voice, and I write it, but it becomes even easier after I see them perform it, because then it's their voices I'm hearing, and their voices sort of, are just end up getting stuck in my head, and it makes writing faster because I can so easily visualize these actors. When you get a good actor who can really deliver lines, it just helps inform, and it encourages. Like, if an actor is really adept at humor, then you're going to go a little more humor with that actor. If they're really good at it, a certain kind of emotion, it helps you mind the stories. So and with all, I can say with both When Calls the Heart and When Hope Calls, I haven't had a scene where I thought, no, the actor can't do that. I won't be able to do that scene because they won't be able to deliver the line, or it won't be. These are all such strong actors.
Wow, nice. I love Wendy Crewson. I think she's so.
Me too.
She's just. I love Haneke too. I hope that's how you pronounce her name, Haneke Talbot. They really appeal to me, both of their characters.
Yes.
She goes by Hank too.
Oh, really? Hank, I love it. That fits.
Yeah, I love when I wrote this the character of Maggie. I just heard an English accent. I really wanted an English accent just to give it a little extra texture. And some actors would act an English accent, right? They would put on, and some are pretty good at it. Hank is from there. That's her accent. So it's great. She never has to. And Wendy, I tell her all the time that I love the gravitas that she brings to her role. I mean, we have, different actors with different, characteristics, and, there's this light element to the Ronnie character that I like. Yeah. And I love the fact that there's this, just this character that just is, is serious. It's just like you take her seriously, that she's someone who's intelligent, who can at times appear a little bit rough around the edges, but she's genuine and she cares. And I love what Wendy brings to the role.
What a horsewoman she appears to be too. My goodness. Yeah.
But then you see that soft side of her.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of creating a character like that, because then the soft side hits you even harder, right? If you see that they're like that.
Yes, it does. Well, when we threw out the cast net to get Hearties questions, we got lots of questions about potential crossovers or guest appearances. What can you tease us about some exciting developments in season 2 of When Hope Calls?
I like season 1 of When Hope Calls. I mean, there won't going to be some of the crossovers that we saw just because now they're on 2 different networks, right? So we won't be seeing that. But we have some exciting guest actors on the show this year. We have Trevor Donovan, who's fantastic. He plays a Mountie, and then we have Jesse Hutch, who will be familiar to some of the people audience, and was from the Hallmark and the GAF world. He was actually in the movie I wrote, The Blessings of Christmas.
Yes.
So, I mean, and they both are, again, fantastic actors that, I think you'll be happy and see what they bring.
We always like to have more than one Mountie. That's very good. Very exciting.
Oh yes, that's bonus Mounties are always good. Well, thank you so much, Alfonso. We really owe you such a debt of gratitude for contributing to the triumph and the longevity of When Calls the Heart. And we're so excited to see your trademark H.E.R back in action on When Hope Calls.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. I hope the audience tunes in. I don't believe they'll be disappointed. I think if any fan of When Calls the Heart, I believe you're going to be moved and enjoy watching When Hope Calls.
We can't wait.
Yes, can't wait for it.
Thank you.
So what you're excited about with season 2 coming soon, Hearties, comment down below, and tune in on PureFlix this Thursday, April 3rd, and on Great American Family this Sunday on April 6th. It's premiere week. Yay! And of course, since we are Hearties, you're welcome to join us on X on Sunday night with the hashtags hopefuls and or Hearties, whatever you want to use. Heart to Hearties has more fun coming your way. So be sure to subscribe on YouTube, and we'll see you next time on Heart to Hearties. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.